Welcome to another edition of Legal Talk here on eRadio with myself, Hahn and Hahn Hahn Attorneys. Joining us today from the firm is Senior Associate Attorney Merilynn Plessis. Merilynn, it's so nice to talk to you again. It's been a while. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Ian?
Fantastic, thank you. Very grateful for not being in the George building during the collapse. That's something we don't see here every day in South Africa. We saw, I don't know if you saw about, I think 3 years ago in Florida, Miami in America, there was an apartment building. But this building was old. It was there for like 40 years or more. And overnight, with all the residents in, 12 stories just spontaneously collapsed into a pancake of rubble, and I think almost 100 people lost their lives in that, and they're still busy with that investigation to find out what exactly happened there, and why did the building just collapse at 1 a.m, with all the people sleeping. And people obviously have their little theories and so on, but why all of a sudden after 40 years would a building just crumble like that? But now here in South Africa, recently in the news, we had here a local story, the George building collapse, where this building was still being built. It was also going to be an apartment building, I believe almost like 40 apartments inside, but it collapsed before it was occupied. It collapsed with the workers who were actually still busy on it, and it was almost complete, and the tilers and all the people installing plumbing and electricity in it, it just collapsed. Now, from a legal point of view, that's where we are going today. Merilynn, who are the parties that can be implicated in such a horrible situation?
Yes, thanks, Ian. So first of all, I mean, it's condolences to anybody that is hearing us and that has been involved in this tragedy. It's a horrible tragedy. And then, yes, unfortunately, what a person must understand when you stand from the outside is that what many people do not know is there's multiple parties involved in a construction project. And I think that's mainly why the investigation takes so long. So just to provide some insight, I think I should explain to you, the basic parties that are involved and that may implement it. And the problem with these things is these parties can be interrelated, meaning that, one party may either perform a part of a function of the project or the whole project, and that's when it becomes tricky. So we generally have an employer, and that's the person who will be the owner of the property, and the person that's obviously trying to have the property constructed. And usually, in this instance, if I understand it correctly, we have developers. So we're not sure if the developers are the employer himself or whether or not the developers were requested by an employer to provide the construction. But the employer would be the main person that starts the construction project. Then from there, usually employers might not be skilled or trained or have knowledge. They would typically appoint a representative. And to the explanation of above, we're not exactly sure if the developer was an employer's representative or the employer himself. But usually the employer's representative would be the person who acts on behalf of the employer. And that might be the project manager or the person that's involved in getting all the parties together. Typically, this could be a range from an engineer to a project manager to a principal agent. And then after that, you'll have your professional team. So you'll have a group of consultants appointed by the employer, which includes an architect, a structural engineer, a cost consultant. You've got environment consultants, and each one of them will have a different function. Sometimes in some contracts, they might, like I said, have further functions, or the functions might just be limited to doing what they specialize in. And then after the professional team, you'll have a contractor. This contractor would be the person that's on site that would be commissioned to construct the works or to commission to construct the design of the works. And I think in this situation now, you'll have your subcontractors, and your subcontractors would be typically the workers on the site that we've seen. And these are the people that actually work on the floor, and they are appointed by various parties. I mean, some instances, the employer's representative can employ a subcontractor, or a contractor can, depending on your agreement. So here's many parties involved, each with their own functions, and I think that's mainly why investigations take so long.
Yeah, thank you for that explainer, Merilynn. And as I said to you just before we started today, I never knew so many people were actually involved in a project like this. It is actually a huge team effort, especially on a building of 4 or 5 stories. But Merilynn, what in your opinion may be the cause of such a situation like the one we're dealing with here, where a building just collapses?
Okay, so like we've just explored, having regard to mentioning how many parties are involved and the functions that are involved. Typically, a construction project happens at certain phases, and I don't want to lose your attention, but depending on the phases, you would have to determine where the cause lied in which phase. And I'll just give you an example. So typically, when you start a construction project, you'll have an architect, and he is the person that will design the building. It's the contractor and the employee's representative and then constructs the work according to the design of that architecture, and then the subcontractors usually do the work on the ground. So the investigations really need to be determined on where the fault lay in. So typically it could be, we've seen instances where building projects, exactly like you've determined or showed us, where the defects have come in later, many years after a project. And then it's found that it's actually the engineer or the architect's design that wasn't proper. Or, for instance, the constructions, when the contractors and the subcontractors actually had to construct this building according to the designs, they didn't adhere to the designs. So typically, it's a tricky situation, because you'd have to go through all those phases and determine whether there was compliance with each and every one of these phases. And if one party didn't perform a function when they needed to perform it. And then I think that would be typically on your legal functions, your professional team. But I think that the other causes that may be considered is inferior quality of materials used. There might also be a timing factor. For instance, when they used the cement, was it properly set before continuing with the constructions? Were there any interruptions? Were there any weather conditions that could have, played a role in setting all of these things? And then obviously with construction projects, usually contractors are placed under strict time frames in when they need to complete these things. And that might place pressure on getting the job done in time, instead of focusing on quality, design, construction, etc.
Okay, and then Merilynn, how will the outcome of the cause of the collapse actually be determined?
So in my view, I would just want to first say, why agreements and especially construction agreements are so important, because the only manner of investigation would be, what track record and what record there is. We've already explored how many parties are involved, and many of these times there will be different agreements that a person will track. But typically they would have to track down all of these agreements, and when the agreements were completed and if they were monitored, parties there are very nice contracts, standard contracts that are available to parties, such as the JBCC, JCC, NEC, the FIDIC contracts, and then the CIDB, the Construction Industry Development Board, also provides standard contracts, which ensures, safety and surety in the smooth running of the operations. And, typically also parties can also negotiate their own terms and conditions. So the problem that we might be facing is that records may not have been kept. However, should records have been kept finally, this is what they will be using to ascertain what went wrong and where.
Okay, and finally, Merilynn, what is your conclusion on this matter?
So my conclusion is to owners or developers, and every single party involved in the projects to be carefully ensure that the necessary agreements are in place, that proper records are kept, and factors such as ensuring your professional team and your contractors are suitably qualified, and records of all of these things are kept. I also suggest that materials should meet at least standards, and a careful monitoring of the project is to be made at all times.
Yeah, definitely. And when you want to cut costs, don't cut costs on materials, because that's something that's going to come and bite you. Maybe not immediately, but in a couple of years from now, that couple of thousand you saved on cheaper cement is going to come and haunt you. And
you know what? And yes, Ian, but just an interesting thing, for example. And I think this is why investigations go so long, because, I'll give you an example of, it's hot and the cement is for instance, the workers are working, the cement is setting too fast. So they add a little bit of water in. And that little variable could change your whole structural composition of your cement.
And integrity.
So, yes, so it's very important that you monitor your things and that you monitor compliance. And yes, like you said, no shortcuts taken.
Yeah, because as you said, it's a very time-sensitive project, and they want to get it up as quickly as possible and save as much money as possible and make as much money as possible. But, there are ways to do that without claiming the lives of other people. And hopefully this will be... Yes. I think one of the ministers said in the news that this is one of the worst building collapse disasters or construction disasters in South Africa since 1994. So hopefully lessons will be learned and people will be more careful, and we'll obviously follow the story, and it will be interesting to see what actually led to this collapse. I don't know if you saw the video of the collapse, Merilynn. There was a CCTV one, but it was the weirdest thing. It just literally fell straight down. It wasn't even like a sideways collapse, just straight down and a lot of dust, and that was it.
And that, yes, so I have had sights of some opinions of civil engineers that said that, what becomes apparent is that it was the parking bay and essentially maybe the cement that caused that. So, I mean, you had this heavy load and you were trying to get your parking bay finalized and you didn't, and it just couldn't carry the load. But I mean, I can't comment on that. We'll have to see what comes out. But yes, it was a horrible situation, and it's concerning that so many employees were on site on the same day. So there's many concerns, but I hope that the necessary parties will be able to be vindicated, and that the truth will come out. Like I said to you, everybody speculates, and actually there's many parties involved in the construction project, so it's not so easy.
Exactly. Merilynn, thank you so much. This was very interesting. Thank you for shedding light on this matter and for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you to the listeners. It was a great pleasure.
And that was Senior Associate Attorney at Hahn Hahn, Merilynn du Plessis.
Are you or your business in trouble and struggling to find a solution? Call Hahn Hahn Attorneys as we assist clients in finding solutions. We specialize in consumer and food law, commercial and construction law, forensic investigations, and administrative law. Visit hahnlaw.co.za. That's HAHN. We assist clients nationwide. Hahn Hahn Attorneys, because we care. Don't miss Legal Talk with Hahn Hahn Attorneys, Wednesday mornings at 10 on eRadio.